Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky show special Pesach Chol Hamoed edition. So nice to be able to spend part of the Yom Tov together with you. And we have a sponsor this week. I will read what's written. We are grateful and excited to be able to sponsor this episode in honor of the birth of our son, Avraham Mordechai, A.B. May he grow to Torah Chuppah Masim Tovim and maybe even merit to be a guest one day on the Rabbi Orlofsky show, whichever episode is next available. By Ellie and Rena Gray. Big Mazel Tov. What a thrill. It is a rare occasion. I have had over the years Talmidim, I've had over the years Talmidot, but when one of them marries the other, and I have a whole family there, and now, a Talmud grandson, it is a special simcha. And I echo the sentiments that you should see only bracha and hatzlacha, and we would be delighted to have him on the podcast. So that's so nice, and what can I tell you? Beautiful simcha. Before I get started, I want to share a story. This is a story that took place a whole bunch of years ago. I used to write a chinuch column in the Hamodia, and I always looked to try to find something that would be a little bit novel. This is the reason I eventually stopped writing, because I didn't know how to churn out a column. I have to be inspired. I have the same problem with the podcast. Sometimes people notice that we fall behind on the podcast, and that's because people who've actually come and watched the process are often surprised how when I sit down to do the podcast, I say, well, what do you think I should talk about? And sometimes I have no idea, and it's just sort of freestyle. But that's much harder to do when you're writing. Writing has more of a tzura to it. That's one of the reasons I don't really write. Haven't really, written articles and things, because it's easier for me to talk than it is for me to write. I did write one book, which has not been published yet. The last book you read before you assimilate, and in the book, people who read it, they say it sounds like you're talking, which is the essence of what you want. You want to capture the dialogue on the page. Not always easy, right? Somewhat miraculous. Rabbi Shapiro once said the Aseres Hadibrais, they were written down, but they were dibur. They were dibur, etched in stone. Amazing concept. But the idea is to get it. There's a process. There's a process called machshava, where you have an idea. Then you have to take that idea and put it into words. Once you do, you limit it. A machshava could be a tremendous thing. Once you put it into words, it becomes limited. When you write that down on paper, it becomes more limited to the point that you don't even own it anymore. So the point is that you may not be able to say, that's not what I meant, when I wrote that, because now it takes on a life of its own once it's written. And even though Rabbi Yehuda Nasi put out the Mishnah, there were many braisos, mishnayos, so to speak, that were written beforehand, but they were never published. There's a famous expression, I forgot who said it first, but not everything that's thought should be said, not everything that's said should be written, and not everything that's written should be published. And that's definitely true. So it's easier for me to talk than it is for me to write. And one of the reasons I've gotten into more trouble for what I've said than for what I've written. In fact, when I was writing my column in Hamodia, I have a whole file of started articles that I didn't finish because I decided it sounds too trite, too ordinary, too ordinaire. And I wanted to have a chiddush. I wanted to say something. Not everyone gets hit with inspiration. Some people are inspired all the time. I have to be inspired, to be able to write something that's going to be meaningful. But I wrote a column about children's tapes. And in it, I happened to give a special mention to the late Shmuel Kunda. Shmuel Kunda, who, of course, recorded many, many cassettes. The most famous of them is the When Zadie Was Young series. And it was amazing that when we would play the When Zadie Is Young, when Zadie was young, everybody enjoyed it. The little children, the older children. It was funny. It was interesting. It had teichen. It was an amazing thing. Absolutely amazing thing. And I spoke about this. Now, Shmuel Kunda at the time was a world-class individual. He was well known throughout Klal Yisrael for his many, many works. He called me up to thank me for speaking about him. He said, I got a copy and I brought it over to my mother that she should have nachas. Now, at the time, I was an obscure columnist in the Hamoed. I mean, I wasn't, that well known at the time. And he was so moved and he was so touched by it that it just made such an impression on me that we forget the power of a nice word. He later dropped off all of his cassettes, had his son drop off all of his cassettes, which wasn't necessary, but was definitely appreciated. Magic Yarmulke, we had a lot of fun. But it was amazing to me. It was a double push it that, of course, he knows how much he's appreciated, and yet that doesn't always go. Very often when people say it goes without saying, it doesn't really go without saying. So that brings me to a letter that I received recently that I will read to you. L'chvod Rabbi Orlofsky, that's me. You know how life sometimes has those before and after moments that will stay with you forever, indelibly transforming the person you are to become. Well, it's pretty heavy stuff. That was just what happened when a friend's email floated into our inboxes last week, innocently titled, "Listen to this shiur, check out the 8:30 mark." And to our shock and greatest glee, we heard those words immortalized on Torah Anytime that would stay with us forever. Rabbi Orlofsky reads the Kichels and likes them. He says they're the greatest source of insight into from society. Those words are going to stay with you forever. There was this woman comedian who once wrote a song called the Mom Song. And it's set to the William Tell overture. And it's what, what a mom says in the course of a day, get your story straight and get your story straight and tell the truth for once, for goodness sake. And if all your friends jumped off the bridge, would you jump too? It's just all the things that a mom says, you know what I mean? Yeah. Stop crying, or I'll give you something real to cry about. Oh, it's like, it's very funny. Anyway, she made a follow-up video to it, and she said, you think about life, and if I had known how many people were going to watch that video, I would have made an effort to sing a lot better. We say things and we don't appreciate them. I've said this word before, but I think it's so beautiful. Everyone knows the Chazal. If Ruvain knew that the Torah said that he saved Yosef, he would have carried him back on his shoulders to his father. If Aaron would have known that it says that he went out to meet Moshe and he was happy in his heart, he would have brought a band. If Boaz knew that the Torah would mention that he gave a Suda to Rus, he would have given a Suda like Shlomo Melech. So what does that mean? They didn't know. They didn't know. So I told this word over from Rabbi Zev left, the Rabbi Moshe Matazio. He says, because we're always saying and doing things, but we don't understand which of them have cosmic consequences. You don't know what you do that's going to make an impact. I gave a shiur on the topic of platonic relationships 25 years ago. I cannot tell you how many people I have met who told me that shiur, changed their lives, that they ended unhealthy relationships and all kinds of unbelievable things that came out of that. I just came in and I spoke. I didn't really think about it, These words will stay with us forever. Now, until that shiur, we would have said that the greatest insight from society, its foibles and flaws, its quirks and community. These are people who know how to write. Was a Rabbi Orlofsky shiur podcast, but who are we to argue with such an august personality? Certainly not in March. Seriously, thank you for the incredibly affirming, pinch us, this is real compliment, which made our week. We were thrilled to hear that you like the Kichels and hope that you enjoy this collection of our strips. And they sent us a copy of, let's see if we can get it in there. Yikes. I'll jump with my, the Kickle collection. And it's really great. I didn't expect to receive a response, frankly, because to my mind, the Kichels are, I know everybody reads the Kichels, much more than listen to the Rabbi Orlofsky podcast, and I certainly didn't expect to get such praise, and certainly not a free book. And I do want to take a moment to tell the Lexus people how much I appreciate your product. And I really am impressed by your car, and I think it does a lot of wonderful things for the world. Okay, so I do want to say the following, though, and I think the only thing that would be appropriate at this point would be for me to make a guest appearance in the Kichel comic strip. I think you should think about including me in a future one. And you think to yourself, could Rabbi Orlofsky possibly be a cartoon character? And the answer is yes, this is me. I appear in the Torah Live videos, which is a combination of live action and cartoon. This is supposed to be me, Rabbi Sitter, and really very exciting. So just throw that your way. So how you work that in is your own business. Anyway, so I really just had to do that little bit of business. Which brings us to the topic of today, which is quite appropriately Chol Hamoed. And the last Kichels in the last issue dealt with all kinds of different issues relating to Pesach. One, of course, is the Chol Hamoed trip. There's a chart. It says, what's the most popular thing? Arguing about what we're going to do today. Correct, Amundo. But I want to talk about something slightly different. And as you know, starting the Shabbos after Pesach, we begin to learn Pirkei Avos. So I want to quote a Mishnah from Pirkei Avos, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Yud Aleph. Rabbi Elazar Modoi Omer, Hamachalo es HaKodshim. If you're Machalo the Kodshim, the Korbanos, V'hamavaze es HaMoedos, and you embarrass the holidays, Hamalvim b'nei chaveru b'rabim, and you embarrass someone in public, V'hameifer briso shel Avram Avinu ol v'shalom, and you don't get a bris, V'magale ponim b'toira shelo ka'halacha, and you teach the wrong message that the Torah is trying to give. Even though you have Torah and Masim Toivim, you have no place in the world to go. Then before I go into why this is and what aspect of it you're taking away, etc. But let's take a moment. The Kodshim in the base of Mikdash to be Mavaza, right? We understand. Machalo Kodshim, very serious thing. Everyone knows that. You embarrass somebody in public. Don't have a bris milah, one of the two assays that you're chayiv kares. By the blood you will live, the blood of the korban Pesach and the blood of the bris milah, the only two mitzvah assay that you are chayiv kares if you don't fulfill. And mavaza es hamoedos, says the Bar Tanura, mavaza es hamoedos, yomim shel Chol Hamoed, osehem balacha, anogen behen midag chol ba'achila v'shtiya. You treat Chol Hamoed like weekdays. Do you understand what this Mishnah is telling us is that a person who is not mechabed Chol Hamoed has no place in Olam Haba, up there with Malva b'nei Chaver b'Rabim, not having a bris milah. Astounding. So I wanted to get on my soapbox just for a little bit during this particular Chol Hamoed. And I start by doing what I always do, which is going into the past. I spend a lot of time in the past. Now it's easier to try to remember the future, and I just can't watch. I can't watch any news or listen to any news anymore. It's so depressing in this country, in America, and every place you listen is just you just get sick, just sickening, But so you go back to the past, the old days, the good old days. Yeah. There's an amazing thing when Donald Trump said, "Make America great again." People say, "Oh, it's racist. He wants a white country without any blacks." That's not what he means. He means let's go back to a time when people were proud to be Americans, where you didn't have to apologize for who we are and what we've accomplished and everything that we've done, and et cetera, et cetera. But there was, somebody said, well, nostalgia is not what it used to be. But there was a time when you look back and you can remember. I'm still old enough to remember people crying on Tisha B'Av, not from a Holocaust film, just saying the Kiddush. They were deeply moved. I still remember people, doing things with the old spirit of what the mitzvahs were supposed to be. And I remember Chol Hamoed as a kid. If you were a firm Jew, on Chol Hamoed, you wore Shabbos clothes. How what? You wore a dress shirt, you wore a tie, and that's how you went about it. Obviously, if you were going to go swimming, you loosened your tie. Obviously, you were going to go to the yul, you put on sneakers, but there was a tzura. Now, the truth of the matter is, I still remember Chol Hamoed used to go around and visit your rebellion, visit Gedolei Torah. Their home was open. Their sukkah was open on Sukkot. Their home was open on Pesach. And people would go and to Mekabel Pnei Rabbi, on Yom Tov. There was a special madrega. There was something special on Chol Hamoed that used to feel it. And there was a time when in Sukkot people spent Sukkot in their sukkah. And then they came up to Yulim. You have to go off to Yulim, take the kids. So when the kids are little, okay, so you have to keep going away to Yulim. And, when my kids were little, I said, sukkahs, I don't think I spent any time in my sukkah. Running around, doing trips, doing all kinds of other things. But you still have to keep it tzura. Has to look like Yom Tov. Chol Hamoed. It's still supposed to be a moed. And the way people talk, and the way people act, and the way people behave, it should have a Yom Tov dika feel to it. You go through the Gemara, and it discusses what you're allowed to do, how you're allowed to do it, what kind of a shinoi you can do. It's major things. Major things, because you go into Chol Hamoed, and Chol Hamoed has to have the Kedusha of a Yom Tov. Okay, we're allowed to do certain things. But you understand, there's the difference between saying it's Chol, and we say Yalav Yavo, and saying it's a Yom Tov, and we're allowed to do certain things. Just like on Yom Tov, as opposed to Shabbos, you're allowed to cook, you're allowed to do certain halachos. So on Chol Hamoed, you're allowed to do some more halachos, but not to the point that it loses its surah. So he says, it's not weekday about achila v'shtiya. What does that mean? It means on Chol Hamoed, you sit down and you have a suda. And you wash. I talked about this years ago, I think. Maybe it was months ago. It could have been yesterday. I don't remember anymore. But my father, Shalom, would never sit down to a meal without bread. My father-in-law, Shalom, your side is Chol Hamoed Pesach, would never sit down to a meal without bread. Unheard of. So Rabbi Peleg, who's the Rebbe of Shari Tzedek Hospital, he told me years ago, he went to Rebbe Yoshev and he asked him, what bracha do you make on schnitzel? Now, I mentioned schnitzel as opposed to a chicken cutlet. Chicken cutlet is obviously a shahakol. Chicken cutlet is a piece of chicken that is egged and battered and lightly fried on both sides. Now, if you were to take that chicken cutlet and beat it with a mallet until it was 4 times its original size, and then soak it in oil until the point that you could put in a wick and recreate the Hanukkah miracle, and then you put a crust of breading on top of it, to the point where you see sometimes these schnitzels, where if you pull up all the breading, there's this tiny little piece of chicken left. Yeah. So what bracha do you make on it? If it's mostly breading, or you make a bezainis, you make a shahakol. So he went to ask Rabbi Yoshev, what bracha do you make on schnitzel? So he says, I don't know, what's a schnitzel? So he went to the Rebbitzin, Rabbi Peleg, and he says, you never gave the Rav a schnitzel? He says, tell him it's what he had for lunch. He says, oh, I never thought about it, because you always wash and make hamotzi. Who would just sit down and eat a schnitzel? Just grab a little piece of schnitzel. So there was a tzura that you would sit down and have a suda, but especially on Yom Tov. And Chol Hamoed is supposed to be like Shabbos and Yom Tov, as the Bar Tanura says, ba'achila b'shtiya. When you see on Chol Hamoed the way somebody dresses, the way somebody talks, the way somebody eats, the way somebody behaves, it should look like Yom Tov. Now things have changed. I lived here in Eretz Yisrael. When I came over 30 years ago, Chol Hamoed, you couldn't buy anything. Everything was closed. There was no makolet open, there was no supermarket open, nothing was open. Whatever you needed for Yom Tov, you bought beforehand, you stored it up, and that was it. Okay, today, a lot of stores are open. It's not the same thing at all. Yeah. It's sort of like back in America, they used to have what was called the Sunday Blue Laws. You weren't allowed to have anything open on Sunday. I remember on Sunday, you couldn't get anything. Everything was closed. You'd search around to try to find a deli or something that was open where you could pick up, milk or bread or something. But for the most part, everything was closed on Sunday. That's what it was like here, Chol Hamoed. Couldn't find anything open. I remember that was one of my big shocks when I moved there. So I lived in Far Rockaway. I don't know if it's still around. I doubt it. I'm here over 30 years, but there was this store called Big Banana. And no matter how close to Shabbos it was, you could always run out, pick up anything. You were short, like some fruits and vegetables, or you were short, some quick groceries that you had to fill in. You could always run out the big banana and pick it up. Um, you know, I was in America. I mean, the kosher supermarkets closed an hour before Shabbos. Here, by 1:00 in the afternoon, everything's closed. You can find one makolet over here or one store over there that might still be open, but for the most part, country closes down. It's a different way of looking at Erev Shabbos. And the same thing, Chol Hamoed. Everything used to be closed because you felt it was a Yom Tov. So what did people do? They went visiting. You visited friends, you visited relatives, you visited rebellion. That's what you did. Well, if a baruch wanted to go on a tiyul, so that's what Ben Zmanim was for. Ben Zmanim, you go out and you go hiking, you go swimming, this. But Chol Hamoed. So what would they do? So they would here in Israel, you go to the zoo. It's packed. If you can even find parking, the animals are hiding inside it. They're traumatized with the crowds. You go to Gad Yoshua, thousands of Charedim, all dressed in their Shabbos best, making a barbecue. Chol Hamoed. You get together with the family and you do something, and this idea of we have to do something. But that says a lot about us, that we just can't enjoy everybody. I have email now. My producer Michael, when he set up my website, so he also set me up a Facebook page. So I have a Facebook page, but I don't really know it. In fact, I opened it up under a different name so that, I don't really have a page. You could do something on the Rabbi Orlofsky page, but it's not under my name. But I used to get these emails. I don't know if they still do this. I used to get emails from some people. They would say, so and so wants to friend you. I said, what does that mean? They want to be your friend. I said, oh, okay. Tell them to give me a call. We'll go out for a cup of coffee, and we'll talk. I'm always happy to have another meaningful relationship. They said, no. They want to add you to their list of 300 friends so you can see their private pictures. I said, it's okay. I already have enough friends like that. Those kind of friends I don't need. Yeah. I said, but to have a relationship where you get together? I may have mentioned this recently. I feel like I did, but it was an interview with Jerry Seinfeld, who at one time had the #1 sitcom in America. And they said to him, could you make that show today? And he says, no, because the show involved people getting together. Why would anyone get together today? You just text somebody or WhatsApp them or message them. And why should people ever see each other, ever get together? I mean, this is one of the worst things that came about from this whole pandemic is the fact that people just don't get together anymore. My Daf Yomi shir that I used to give in person has been on Zoom now for almost a year. And I'm trying, after Shkolem, I said, we're going to start going back to in person. Someone said, will the Zoom continue? I said, yeah, I think Zoom will continue, but you can't compare it to when you have actual people sitting together. Yeah. You can't make a virtual minyan. Sometimes you see in a minyan, people are like davening from their smartphone. So I said, you could probably program it just to daven for you. So you don't even have to daven. So the guy says, no, I need a minyan. I said, no problem, man. Beforehand, have it call 9 other iPhones. They could all daven together. In fact, you could put it on vibrate so it'll shuckle. Ay, ay, ay. In America, they used to have the big Great Adventure Day, and you'd see there was some people who came dressed for, for Chol Hamoed. Some people came dressed for Beit Matter. Most of the time, you saw them dressed for the winter with a parka. It was always freezing. Pesach, Chol Hamoed, and Great Adventure, and mostly you would make your way to the kosher pavilion, where you could, where you could buy a kosher Frankfurt for $35 and a, kosher for Pesach Coke for like $18, and a little bag of potato chips, about this big, for $15, and that was the highlight. When the winds are blowing and it's raining, to be in some, machine swinging you around upside down 100 miles an hour is not exactly the most exciting experience. Again, to each their own. My granddaughter told me, she says, Zaidi, what should I do that I'm always bored? I said, well, do what I did, get ADD. Then you can be any place you want. You're never limited by anything. You could just have fun all by yourself. My wife looks at me sometimes and she says, what's so funny? Nothing. No, tell me. Okay, let's go down the rabbit hole because it's going to be pretty complicated. I've gone far abroad and far about. But imagination used to be such a great thing. My father Shalom used to say, you could go out and buy your kid the greatest toy and he'll have more fun playing with the box. His imagination. There used to be this series of short films called The Little Rascals. And Hal Roach, who developed it, he says he was looking out his window and he saw a bunch of kids sitting there fighting over some stick that they found. He says at the end of the day, they'll toss it down and walk away. They don't care about it. But at that moment, it becomes the most important thing to him. And he says, that's what I wanted to try to capture, that essence, of how people could have fun just by being together. And we have to go out and do things. I mentioned this back when I was talking about my Shidduchim series, that, here in Eretz Yisrael, basically you go to a hotel lounge and you have a drink and you sit and talk. And then the next date you go to another one, you keep this doing until you get married, and then you stay at home and you drink tea and, and Diet Coke and have the same conversations. It's not so lonely as it used to be because I got my wife and 7 kids along with me. But, but in America, I told you this, I had a Talmud who was saying, he says, you have to do activities. You have to go archery, go-karting. It's like, it's like they're not looking for a husband, they're looking for a camp director, you know what I mean, to make activities, Anyway, be that as it may, I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on the fact that as so many other things have slipped away, so has Chol Hamoed. Mavazes and Moedos, says the Bartanura. Yeah, that means Chol Hamoed. When we do malacha that we're not allowed to do, it's not a yontif, ba'achila v'shtiyah. Wow, that's harsh. So I encourage everybody with what's left of our Chol Hamoed, make it meaningful. Yeah, take that opportunity to turn it into a yontif, where you're allowed to do things, instead of a chol, where you just say yalav v'yavo and eat matzah. And that's what I wanted to talk about this week as we finish up our Pesach program podcast. And that's it. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can make a comment, send an email, sponsor an episode. And that's it. That's it. I have to go now and have my Suda. This is David Orlofsky.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.